What's up, and welcome to episode 6 of the Emotional Bankroll podcast, a series where I interview DFS pros about the lifestyle and mental health aspects of playing daily fantasy sports for a living. You may have the financial means to go pro, but do you have the emotional bankroll to deal with the highs and lows? I'm Brian Jester, and in this episode, I chat with Gio DeMers, who you know as rbx88 on DraftKings. Gio has not one, not two, but three separate DraftKings Millionaire Maker wins. And that doesn't even include his other two second place and his sixth place Millie finishes. Oh yeah, by the way, Gio also won a World Series of Poker bracelet last summer to add to his 2011 top 20 finish at the World Series of Poker main event. It's not a bad run. I chatted with Gio about what that 3 milli stretch feels like now that it's had time to set in, how to push edges, and what it's like to feel so confident during a heater, and on the flip side, how to minimize losses during a cold spell. And then we finished our discussion on what it's like to play both poker and DFS professionally from all angles. We have plenty of interviews lined up. More DFS pros are coming on the show, so make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app to get notified whenever an interview is released. If you like the show, if you like this episode, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star rating and review. It'll greatly help us out. Let's get to it. All right, let's bring him in. The man, the myth, the legend. It's Gio, rbx88. Gio, what's up, brother?
Just relax at my house, taking a nice little extended break from fantasy, being that NBA has stalled since it's going to be back on Thursday, so I get a little time off here.
Those breaks are much needed, and for someone like you who plays a lot and plays everything and plays poker, and I know those breaks are definitely needed for you. So this is a great time for you to do pods. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join me and talk about this type of stuff. And you haven't done too many interviews, so feel very happy that you're on this show.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about, fantasy, poker, whatever you got for me.
All right, we got all kinds of stuff for you. So let's just jump into it, right? So I was introduced to rbx88 after you won the second millie. I tweeted about your wizardry and your first place finishes and your near millie wins. And there's a lot of notoriety, at least at that time, a lot of notoriety around your wins. So, and you did a couple interviews after your big wins. Did you enjoy the notoriety of people not knowing who you were? And do you still now enjoy talking about your wins and your success?
Yeah, it was definitely fun looking all over Twitter and seeing like, oh, who is this person? Oh, he's cheating. He's using multiple accounts. I was just laughing and saying to myself, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can see why it's skeptical, but it was just unreal to see how many people, how many tweets are going out all about it.
Well, you know how it is, right? Well, especially with casual players, if they can't explain something, it has to be a conspiracy. It has to be bots. It has to be someone cheating, and you're just the topic of cheating conversation at that point because it brings out all the conspiracy theorists. So you did these other interviews, and when it first happened to you, you described the wins as pure shock, and it took a couple of days for it to set in. But now you've had plenty of time for those three separate $1 million wins to sink in. Looking back now, how do you characterize that heater?
I'll tell you what, it's compared to now that I see it all and it's been a little while, it's absolutely unreal. And I may note that I did get second twice in two other milli makers too. So to do all of that in I don't know how long it was, 15 months, 18 months, is just absolutely unreal. And I don't think you won't see that for a very long time.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And it's really difficult to get top two in 1 milli, let alone win three, top two in others, top six in a couple others. And one of your wins was in, I think it was the 4K milli, but the other wins in close calls were in the large field, the super large field, hundreds of thousands of people. So it's just an insane stretch. So now that you had this time to process it, do you attribute those wins personally? Because if you look at what other people are saying or what other people think, there's two camps, right? Some people think that you're just insanely lucky. You're an insanely lucky person. And then there are some people that think, well, this dude obviously has something going on because he's gotten so close so many times. So do you personally, Gio, after looking back at all this, do you attribute that win streak to an insanely sound process, unique strategy, incredible risk tolerance, or whatever you want to call it? Or more so, it was pure variance in the sense that it was probably likely at some point over the history of DFS that someone would win multiple millies, maybe not three, but definitely two, over the course of an 18-month period, and it just so happened to be you.
Yeah, it's reflecting on it. My process has changed a little differently. I think in the larger field tournaments, you have to take stands and you have to take a lot bigger risks. One of those millies, I definitely took a big stand on like a low owned guy, and I just happened to have the right combo. And it's really you have to put yourself in the best position to win. And if you do that, you're going to get sweats, you're going to get your lineups up there. And that's pretty much, I definitely adjusted and made a lot of big stands with the plays compared to like the field.
And that's the key, right? Is you can't control if you get first or not. You can control how often you get near the top and whether the ball bounces in whatever sport it is to get you first or 10th. That's completely out of your control. But you're doing the best effort that you can to get yourself in those spots, and you've done a great job, obviously. And maybe you got a little more luck at the top, right? But still, Joe,
Right.
you got yourself there.
Yep, yep. No, that's the beauty of it you just have to be content with losing. You're going to lose 85-90% of the days you play probably, but it's that one time where all it takes is one day out of the whole year to make your whole year. And that's how I look at it.
And for you, it only takes 3 days to make an entire lifetime. So, so all right, let's talk about the post heater and how you adjust it emotionally. Because for anyone, that's just an insane run, insane success. Have you ever had that much success literally in any other area of your life?
No, in poker, I definitely done very well in poker, and that's definitely helped me transition to fantasy. But one of my biggest other accomplishments are probably getting 20th in the main event at the World Series. That was definitely one of my biggest accomplishments, and winning the World Series of poker bracelet. But winning all those million makers is definitely the top of the list for sure.
One, congrats on the WSOP success. That's obviously great.
Thank you.
And it just goes to show that your line of thinking transfers to other areas and back and forth and vice versa. And did you ever think about, or how did you handle people thinking that you were probably an overnight success coming out of nowhere to win these? When I assume that you've been working on your game for a long time, or do other people's thoughts not matter about your play?
I don't really care what other people think, to be honest. I know I work hard. I put in a lot of time. I can see why. I just came out of nowhere and I just start winning. But I put in a lot of effort. I study. I do trial and error with everything I do.
Right. And speaking on the emotional aspect, I've never won 3 millies, but I have won one. So I understand that the high you get from such a big win. Did that seep into your DFS play afterwards at all, or even into your life trying to chase that high?
After winning it, that's what I wanted to win, and then I won two more, and I was just like, "Are you kidding me? This is just ridiculous." So like, I don't have that high no more. I just play for myself and show that I can win, and that's pretty much what motivates me to keep playing.
Yeah, and that's another question I ask a lot of the guests on here. What motivates you to keep playing after such great financial success? So for you, it sounds like it's to keep proving to yourself that you can win and that those wins weren't necessarily a fluke. Is that right?
It definitely motivates me. I bought a house, so obviously I spent some money, so that makes me want to keep grinding more. It definitely, has a big impact on my life financially, obviously, but I feel like I get more tired when I don't play. So I'm always it's just the thrill and the strategy and the game theory of DFS that makes me want to keep playing. For now, I don't plan on doing it forever.
Right. I don't think many of us do, but again, as long as you have that drive and it still excites you, then you're going to keep playing. Let's talk about your intro to DFS for a second, because you talked about your WSOP, how you play poker, you played poker professionally, and many pros that I've talked to on this show and just outside of this show discuss how difficult they think it is to grind to a high level in DFS from a small bankroll. So when you decided to get into DFS, and I think you said it was 2017, and you admitted that you lost for that first year at least, did you take a sizable portion of your poker bankroll initially to test the waters, or did you start small and work up?
I definitely started out small, and then as I got a little better feel for it, I started, playing more. I did hit one really early on for like 50, 60, and it wasn't long after I lost that. So I deposited more money, I kept trying, and then I hit again, and I started losing again, and I started to lose hope, but I kept on trying and playing the absolute best I could because I really love DFS. It's so exciting to me to have the sweats and when you see your name up top and you just hopefully you can get that last stride to win.
So I think there's obviously ebbs and flows in your confidence level as you continue to play DFS. And especially early, you get that first big hit, like you said, maybe 50, 60K. Okay, that's a little bump in confidence, but then you lose it all back. And I think a lot of people have this scenario play out for them and you lose that confidence. So
Right.
during your first year of playing DFS, you're jumping into it, what was your confidence level like during that year? And then at what point did you finally start to become fully confident in your ability to make money doing this?
My confidence was not very good. I would go into a lot of the slates kind of clueless, didn't really have a process or strategy, just kind of made my own style along the way just by doing trial and error. Now, when I got the most confidence was actually probably after the second Millie win. Obviously, winning a Millie, anyone can do it. There's a lot of variance, but I'm like, okay, I won two now. So that just motivated me so much to get better and make my own process. And what I think made me successful.
Was there any light bulb moment that you can specifically pinpoint as to, okay, I think I finally got a grasp of this now? Or was it just, like you said, trial and error, and eventually over time, that was just more of a gradual, okay, I know what I'm doing and I think this works?
Right. No, I think that figuring out what everyone else is doing and kind of adjusting yourself to incorporate it in my own style, that's, I think, a nice strategy that I started off with is doing the opposite of kind of what everyone else was doing.
Okay, so that's a great transition into the process portion of this episode because you've talked about in your previous interviews, you just talked about it right there, your unorthodox play style, both in poker and in DFS. You've also often mentioned that you play based on gut and feel. Do you think that that's a major edge over players in poker or DFS who play optimally?
Yeah, I really think so. And a lot of poker players who play with me, the New Jersey guys in Omaha. I don't play GTO. I do nothing like that. I play my own style and I crushed for years and years and years. And a lot of people can vouch for me. And in, DFS too, I just go, I don't really give a shit like who's like the good chalk or whatever. If I think a guy is gonna be garbage, I just don't play him. And I don't care what the projections say. I just go on my gut for that day and based it on like how they've been playing, look at the reports. There's a lot of different things that go into my thought process.
Because there's a greater margin for error for a process like yours versus playing the same way that a lot of other pros play, because then you're grinding small edges against those guys. Where if you're playing completely differently, you don't have to be completely perfect to win, right?
Right. No, you can definitely have as big as an edge as someone else who's maxing out a tournament and you're playing, one third of the lineups. So it depends where you take it. You can take a little bigger risk and it definitely works out the same, I think, in my opinion.
For sure. So if you're not playing GTO, and that's game theory optimal for those who aren't aware, if you're not playing by GTO standards, whether it's poker or DFS, how do you evaluate your process? Because we've had pros on here before, and I think this is a great way for casual players to try to figure out their way is, okay, what are the best pros in this sport? How do they play the game? And you look, you say, okay, I had an X exposure to this guy. What did the top players do? How did they approach this situation? And you can evaluate your process that way. But if you have your own completely separate, siloed process, how do you evaluate that process if you do play so uniquely?
I basically go through like how like I've played in the past, and I make small adjustments, and it honestly it depends on slate to slate. My process might change from okay Monday to Friday, but I don't change it very significantly. It's just like kind of little tweaks here and there, and depending on news, and there's a lot. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it, but I can tell you that I definitely make tweaks here and there depending on history of like the players and if they're on a hot streak or cold streak. That definitely all goes into my thinking from day to day, and especially when I'm playing NBA.
Yeah, for those who play NBA, I don't play NBA. I don't know how you guys do it. So there's a lot of tweaking, obviously, in that sport. And since you have a unique approach, right, I imagine there's some doubt when things go wrong because you're not playing, quote unquote, the right way to play. So how much doubt do you feel when things do go wrong and a slate goes wrong, a couple slates go wrong, a month worth of slates go wrong? How much doubt creeps into your process?
Yeah, I definitely get discouraged when I'm losing for like, like a month or 2 months, but I just stick to my process, and one of those nights I'm just gonna hit and I'm gonna win a lot of money. It's gonna make up for all those days that I lost. I just try to do what I think is right. I don't really like to follow and take picks and from what people say, because I'd rather lose with my own picks than someone else's.
Yeah, there's nothing worse, especially for casual players out there, nothing worse than having your own conviction and then you read something, you listen to something, and it talks you off that conviction, and you play something else, and it doesn't work out, and you'll be much madder at yourself for not playing your own conviction than playing someone else's conviction and it fails. So going back to the hot streak really quickly, the opposite side of this, in the past you've talked about this like in the zone decision making and pushing edges when you're running hot. And so whether for those of you out there listening who either play sports and know the hot hand, you're feeling it, or you're playing poker, you're playing DFS, and just everything you're doing is going right. This in the zone decision making that you've referenced before, does that boil down to just being more aggressive and confident in your decisions and reads, or is there another way you kind of describe this feeling?
Yeah, for sure. When I'm running hot, I definitely push. I definitely am more aggressive. I'll play more lineups. I feel like I'm on top of the world when I'm winning, and my confidence is through the roof. So I definitely push it, and then if I catch a little cold streak, I'll back off. But when I'm winning though, I'm in there, and I'm firing, and I have no regrets.
A quick timeout to remind you that this episode is sponsored by the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy, powered by DFS Magic. Are you tired of expensive DFS optimizers not providing the settings and tools you need to create profitable lineups in all sports? Check out the lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy, created, built, and used by top DFS pros. Use it to hand build entries or automatically create up to 150 lineups using optimal lineup criteria and sport specific settings. Visit occupyfantasy.com/lineup builder for more information. Now back to the show. Do you think that actually helps your decision making, like having no worries, all this positive energy is coming through, and you're not second guessing yourself just because you've had success, and now all of a sudden you don't question anything about what you're looking at? If you see a guy that's 2% owned and you have conviction on him, you're hot, you're feeling it, you have no trouble playing that guy, right?
Nope. And I'm totally happy with losing.
Yeah, and I think that's a key. You have to be happy with losing. We have that as a
Yep.
common theme on this show. And if you're not okay with losing, you're not going to have the chances to win big. So now, speaking of losing and being okay with losing, let's talk about the lows for a second and talk about handling
Sure.
swings. For those of you who are in the industry, Frankie Bourne, FJ Bourne. He's tweeted a few times screenshots of his roto tracker results graph, which have insane downswings followed by insane upswings. And his most recent one, I think it was either late December, early January of this year, he posted one and he replied, haha, you should see mine, which obviously piques everyone's interest. So in as much or as little detail, Gio, as you're willing to describe, what's the worst downswing you've had in your DFS career? And whether that's from a length perspective, how long the downswing lasted, or a financial perspective.
So last year was the first year I did MLB, and I was still trying to grasp it, and I was losing. And then I hit. I don't know, one tournament for maybe 150, 200K, and I was up 100, 150, maybe an MLB, and then towards the end of the season, I wound up being down 50K. And since that, when I was down 50K, I was probably stuck at one point until December about 350 to 400K.
For the
I
year?
think for the year, I was down about 300 to 400. I can't quite remember. I have to go into my roto tracker, but I can't quite remember. But I was down around 300 to 400K on the year.
So you had all the success leading up to that.
Right.
How did that feel to you being down, 300, 400K?
The thing is, with me being able to play poker, I can suppress that. So I can play poker and not make it so bad. That's I think one of the advantages I have that I can still play and make money doing something else too. So I wasn't really discouraged too much. It did really help that in December my mom brought me over a money tree and I wound up winning 600K in December. So that kind of made my year.
All right, so for those of you listening, the key to DFS success is an actual money tree. So go out and buy those.
It's right behind me.
I see. Yeah. So we don't have video here, but I see it. I will put the Amazon link in, in my description so you guys can go out and buy one. But so you just talked about poker, right? And if there's anything to ever prepare you for DFS swings, it's got to be pot limit Omaha, I'd imagine. So for the
Right.
uninitiated, Gio, explain the variance of PLO since it's notorious for its crazy swings.
Yeah, you only make PLO as high variance as you make it to be. So if you're very aggressive, it's going to be very higher variance. If you play a more tighter style, it's going to be a little lower variance. But one thing I can tell you from my experience, the variance between DFS and PLO, it's not even close. DFS variance is through the roof,
Wow.
and poker variance, it feels like a walk in the park to me when I go back to it.
Yeah, Brick75 was on the second episode here, and he said the same exact thing. And is that just
Yeah.
because the amount of buy-ins that you're risking on a day-to-day basis in DFS, or is it just the natural variance inherent in the game?
The thing is, you don't have control over what happens in DFS. You only can make it and then kind of watch and hope that you win. In poker, there's a lot more things you can control, and there's a lot more variables that I guess we'll talk about in a little bit that you can do to kind of suppress like how much you lose.
For sure. So before we get into that, just really quickly, you mentioned that poker has trained you to be able to suppress some of the feelings during the downswing. So do you think that you handle those well now, and are you fully, maybe not fully, but mostly desensitized or hardened because of those poker background?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely has helped me. I don't really get discouraged too often. That stretch last year, my one buddy, Royal Pain, I asked him, and he's just like, man, just stick to your process. So, and that's what I did. I stuck to my process throughout to the end of the year. I gutted it out, and I went up having a winning year, and that really proved to me, I can do it. So it definitely was a nice confidence booster to the end of the year.
Nice. And Royal Pain, he's won 2 millies now, right?
Yeah, yeah. I met him at the Super Bowl when Brady versus Chiefs, that one.
Oh, cool. So just don't play credit card roulette at dinner with Royal Pain and Geo here. All right. So when you're in a bankroll valley, you're down 400K, you're down whatever in PLO. Do you have a process when you're in one of these valleys or tips or tricks to help deal with the significant financial losses or tips or tricks to help you make better decisions when you're facing these losses?
Yeah, so I had a very close friend of mine playing poker, and this is where it really stuck with me. My buddy, a poker friend of mine, Daniel Zach, he told me that, just be disciplined and quit when you're losing. And I started doing that, and I started winning more, more, and more. Just quitting when I'm losing, I have no momentum, and you don't realize how much you capitalize when you actually are running hot. And then, so if you were tilting and you kept on blowing money, that's now when you run hot, you have to make all that money back. And if you just quit, that's just makes you capitalize on those losses a lot more. Same thing like for DFS. If you're losing, I do not, absolutely do not chase in DFS. I keep doing my same process. I don't play high stakes as much, and I just play the 150 maxes. And until I hit, then I'll go back. But for one thing is, I do not chase.
So when you say quit while you're down, in poker, that's obviously right. You just leave the table. But in DFS, the way that transfers over for you is not chasing with higher buy-ins, maybe not entering the night slates or the showdown slates more after losses. Is that how that works?
Yeah, I don't. One thing about me is I don't play the nightly slates or anything like that. And I think that really helps because you're just pushing such a small edge and you have to kind of be perfect for these nightly slates. And with the rake and the prize pools, it's not very good. I just don't think it's beatable in my eyes. So I obviously can max it out and play, but I choose not to. I'd rather push my edge somewhere else and like a 3 entry max or the daily 150 maxes or whatever. But I definitely do not play like NBA Showdown or the nightlies in NBA.
And I think that's a big part that a lot of people don't talk about is actually recognizing the edges and maximizing those because a lot of people of your level and of top tier DFS level have the ability and the financial means to max every slate to play all the sports. But a big part of being a successful DFS player is the bankroll management in the sense that you don't have to play everything. There's a lot of trimming of the fat when it comes to which sports you play, which slate you play, and even how many lineups you make and what you do with those lineups. So that's really important. So you talked about these bankroll management decisions. Are you entering more when you're winning? And it sounds like you're not entering as much when you're losing, but just talk to me about when you're up versus when you're down, what those bankroll management decisions look like.
Yeah, when I'm up, you can catch me playing everything. I'll even play some of the nightly stuff, and just because I'm running hot, I will play it. But I definitely have very good discipline when it comes to when I'm losing. And I think that if I didn't do that last year, I would have wound up having a big losing year if I kept on maxing out while I was losing, playing higher stakes, playing more lineups in higher stakes when I was losing. You're just not in the right mindset when you do those type of things. You can't think clearly, but when you're running hot, you're thinking clearly. You got confidence, and you want to push that. You want to press.
And so that's not necessarily as much as the time that it takes to enter all those lineups. You're losing, you're entering every slate, and you don't have the time to think about things properly. It's more so just the subconscious aspect of creating lineups. You're in a better headspace when you're winning, not necessarily that you're constricted by time, right?
Right, exactly. It's definitely not. It's basically an intangible. You can't teach that. You have to control your emotions and be disciplined. And I think that is goes a very, very long way from my experience.
For sure. Do you have separate DFS and poker bankrolls, or does it all kind of mix together for you?
It's kind of mixed together, but like I have obviously my bankroll on, DraftKings, FanDuel, and then I have my poker bankrolls on the poker sites itself. But I definitely it's all one big bankroll for me.
Cool. Okay. So let's talk about the lifestyle now of being a DFS slash poker pro. And everyone wants to be it. But as I've talked about on this show before, it's not necessarily that glamorous from a lifestyle perspective. And it's pretty unhealthy at times where you're sitting a ton. You are glued to devices all hours of the day. If you're playing poker, the sleep schedule is pretty weird. How do you balance that, Gio? Do you do any exercising, physical, mental, anything that you do to try to balance that?
Well, I just moved into my new house, so I'm about all done, settled in. So I'm going to, now that it's getting warmer outside, because I moved in when it was basically winter time,
Right.
which is kind of crappy. So as the weather gets nicer, it gives me more motivation to, there's a gym right across the street, I'm going to join there. I have the one thing I came what I wanted most was is a hot tub. So I bought the hot tub, and that kind of resets me mentally, relaxes me. And I try to go in there about 5 times a week and just kind of relax and rest my brain. And it definitely was one of the best investments I made. As far as eating, I eat well pretty much throughout the whole week. I kind of cheat a little bit on the weekends. I just it's all keep everything in moderation, and I think that's good for balance. But for sure, exercising gives you a clear head. I haven't done much of it since I moved here, but I will be changing that shortly.
And I think an underrated aspect of the hot tub angle that you're talking about here is, and I assume when you're in the hot tub, are you not like on your phone? You're not listening to podcasts or music or anything? Are you just out there with just you and your mind?
Yep, it's just me and me only. And I just go in there and just, close my eyes and just relax, really. And it's 15, 20 minutes and you feel like a brand new person. It's really unbelievable how much of an effect that has on me mentally going in there. It's definitely a great investment.
That's amazing to hear. And I think for those of you out there listening who don't have hot tub money, right, there are other ways to just find 15 minutes of your day to think about nothing, where you're not on a device, you're not reading, watching, listening to something. There's an interesting process that goes on with your brain and your subconscious to your conscious of ideas formulating when you actually think about nothing. And Gio, I think that's what you just described. So, well, congrats on the hot tub purchase. And I think that that'll help a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. Even in a sauna helps too. Sweat out all the toxins in your body, and you feel like a brand new person.
All right, let me get a little personal here for a second. Are you married or dating right now?
Yeah, I date, here and there, or at least try to.
So you're dating or trying to. How has DFS and poker and that lifestyle affected that area of your life?
It definitely has turned people off. They just don't understand it. They just see it as gambling. Um, and I guess they're not interested enough to understand how it actually works. They just see it and then just think gambling, and it's kind of tough. But I try not to talk about it too much. I try to kind of steer away from it and just kind of get to know them as a person and let them get to know my personality, and try not to bring it up too much. But because it definitely turns some away, and they just don't like the fact of the quote gambling aspect of it.
For sure. You got to hammer them with your personality, get them to like you as much as possible before you drop that bomb that,
Right,
that you're
right.
quote unquote a professional gambler, right? So, I mean, it's tough. Have you ever thought about, because we had Alex Baker on episode 3, and he talked about one of the reasons he started Awesemo.com was to have this more legitimate in the eyes of society profession where he runs a sports media company. Have you ever thought about, and maybe not you starting your own website or anything, but some sort of secondary income or job that looks better, and this is terrible to say, but looks better on a dating or societal resume?
Yeah, I definitely consider just like saying poker coaching or DFS coaching. That sounds more of a stable than actually gambling. You know what
Right.
I mean?
For sure.
So that's one thing. I do have people that ask me about, coaching and all that stuff. I could definitely do that, but does it really interest me as much as playing and, striving to be the best I can? No, but maybe when I slow it down a little bit, I will do some coaching. So maybe, it's a good thing that I can tell them, I just do poker and daily fantasy, sports coaching.
Right. And I guess that just depends on what you want out of life and what you're looking for in relationships and whatnot. So that's interesting to hear. What about your non-gambling friends and family? What do they think of your profession?
They think I can do anything whenever I want, whenever I want. But when it's NBA season, you kind of can't really go anywhere from like, I live on the East Coast, so you can't really do anything from like 5 o'clock up until the last game. So you're like tied down basically. Yeah, it's a little unhealthy, but I love to do it. They really don't understand, so I just kind of keep it really basic with them, and they just ask how I'm doing. I say, yeah, I'm doing okay, up and down, but that's
That's
pretty much it.
yeah, that's the best way. When you're losing, you're breaking even, and when you're winning, right? When they ask.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So in non-romantic relationships, new people you meet out in the world when you're out in the world, how do you explain what you do? Do you just say, I play daily fantasy sports, I play poker, or do you try to explain it in a different way?
I in the past I definitely have just said I do that, but then I get asked literally a million questions, like stupid questions, and it's like I don't really want to waste my energy on trying to explain it, you know. So I try to keep it really vague, and that's pretty much what it comes down to. I think I heard Brick saying that like you get bombarded with questions, so, and I'm not really trying to looking for that. I just try to keep it very vague.
That's smart, especially depends on the audience for sure. So let's talk about sweating games and lineups really quickly. I've heard you say that you watch Red Zone, you watch live games, you sweat your lineups. I mean, it's fun, right? Who doesn't want to do that? So, do you watch the games for just pure enjoyment of watching actual sporting events? Do you watch them for the necessity to help those gut and those field decisions for you in the future? Are you just an action junkie and love the sweats, or do you? I do this personally. Do you just watch the games to reap the rewards of all the work you put in?
I'm not really a super action junkie. You know, I do bet and do props and stuff like that, but I definitely watch to see what people are doing and how they're playing just to make my future decisions when I'm playing DFS. It is exciting to watch sometimes, but if I didn't do DFS, I can put it you this way. I really wouldn't watch sports. I really don't care for it. I just like the aspect of DFS.
Same thing if you bet on sports, you would watch it if you bet, but if you didn't have any
Right.
action on the game, you wouldn't watch.
No, I would doesn't interest me.
I think I feel the same way outside of NFL, and I think I just grew up on fantasy football, and I would watch games that way. But I agree with you. Other sports, do you watch like NBA and MLB when you're playing those sports?
I just watch the ESPN app.
Okay.
I don't actually watch the game itself. But you know, I'm always looking at the stats and see how people are shooting, and you know, if guys are on cold streaks or some guys are on hot streaks, and that's pretty much what I watch for. But I don't actually watch basketball live now.
Yeah, I mean it's impossible, right? Especially if you're playing every day, you're trying to watch 10 games
Right?
per night. Yeah, you'll go
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah. It's too much.
For sure. All right, Gio, I know you're busy. Let's get you out of here, but let's talk about some final advice first for people
Sure.
out there listening who are thinking about being a DFS pro, want to be a DFS pro at some point, and you come out at this with a different angle, not necessarily because you have a poker background, but because you do think about things differently. So, what would you say is the most important skill to have in being a DFS pro?
I would say bankroll management. If you don't manage your bankroll correctly, you're going to lose your money and you won't be able to play. So use your money wisely, pick your edges correctly and what tournaments you're selecting, and just try to have a basic strategy and hopefully your guys do their jobs and take it from there. But definitely the bankroll thing is very very important. I know a lot of people from poker that are very good at poker, but they don't have money to play with because they have no bankroll management. So it's a very important thing.
It's a completely separate skill and one that's very important to stay in the game for a long time. You said you started playing poker professionally when you were what, like 18 or 19. I assume, like most poker players, you probably went bust a couple times before you realized the value of bankroll management.
Oh, I had probably $100,000 to my name 15 times,
Wow.
and I lost it. I always lost it, and finally, I finally okay. I'm not doing this again. This is stupid and annoying. I am doing it right, and I had talent. I knew what I was doing, but sometimes you push that too hard, and you get tilted and you chase. It's very easier to chase in poker than it is in DFS. So it definitely bankroll management is 100% key
Yeah.
to success.
Yeah, that I think that'll ring true for a lot of people out there. And for people who want to become a DFS pro, what would you tell them? Would you recommend doing it? Would you tell them run away, don't do this, or do you think that there's still an edge, and do you think that there's plenty of value in living this type of lifestyle?
Nope, I would tell them to do something else.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that for a second. Why do you say that?
And you have to be very strong mentally to play DFS. You have to be okay with losing. You have to be on top of your game always. It's very tough. The rake and like some of the payouts in some of the tournaments are very bad, and you just don't play just to play it. You have to be selective on what you play too. A lot of these tournaments are really shitty, and I just don't even bother playing them. You have to do a lot of research. You have to create your own process. If I could do it all over again, would I? For me, yeah, because I'm competitive and I like the strategy and game theory of it. But if you're like a novice or a rec player that want to do it full time, no, I would not. It's definitely a lot of stress mentally. For me, I just have a thick skull and I handle it pretty well.
You talked about the top-heavy nature of DFS contests. Did that shock you when you came over from poker? Because, and I know you played mostly cash, but obviously you played some tournaments as
Right.
well. But in poker, they're generally not as top-heavy and more balanced payouts. Did that surprise you when you came over and saw the prize structures of some of these tournaments?
Yeah, and I see why they do it. It's just, all promotion. I think a lot more people would play if it was a more balanced, but they're not, they don't really care about that, it seems like. So, but yeah, to see $1 million for first and 100K for second is just absolutely bizarre.
It's actually nuts. It's actually nuts to think
Yeah.
about. And just real quick, want to pick your brain on one more thing. You mentioned there's some tournaments you just don't play. Do you have hard and fast rules on buy-in versus number of people paid versus top 10 percentage versus percentage to first that you'll follow those rules and you just won't play a contest? Or is there more math that goes into you deciding whether or not you play a specific tournament?
I definitely have my own process to when it comes in like the higher stakes. I usually only play 1/3 of the max lineups. Um, some depending on the payouts, I will max or I'll play with a little more. Like for instance, the 800 on that they had the 888, I think once every month. I would do like 1/3 in that or a little more. I think I won it in December. I'm not sure if I did like 14 or half or something like that. I forget what I did. But I definitely like to play a little more when I like the payouts. They're a lot more kind of even balance, and it's not your ordinary, 100K to first type night.
Right, because the 888 you won was what, like 250 or something in that range,
Yeah,
right?
it was 250 for first, and that's a really good tournament to play to satellite and win tickets. It's a great tournament. So stuff like that when they have it, I definitely try to play a little more of.
And again, one more question. So when you play, for instance, that 888 and you enter 10 lineups or 15 lineups compared to the max of 37 or whatever it is that night, you feel comfortable in having less lineups than some people because A, you've done it before, and B, your process is so different that you feel that you can get such an edge just with a limited number of lineups, right?
Yes, I can definitely take bigger stands. And if I see a guy's super chalk for like no reason, I just won't play it. And I'll find my edge. And if there's like late news that didn't come out yet, I'll definitely not play the early games and wait for the late games to see the news. I think that's a big edge in playing less lineups because you got the guys who are maxing out. You have to change so much at once. You can kind of really finesse and really dial in on the few lineups that you have and create a bigger edge than the guys who I think max it out or close to max it out.
Absolutely, and that's a very great point to get us out of here, Gio. I appreciate you. Very enlightening. A lot of great topics that we talked about here. I'll give you the floor if there's any final topics or anything you want to promote or just talk about.
Nope, that's pretty much it. And whoever plays DFS, best of luck to you guys.
Be on the lookout for Gio's coaching coming here down the line, and we'll put the referral link for Money Trees in the description. So everything you need to win 3 millies like Gio, we got you covered. So
Sounds
rbx88,
good.
we appreciate you joining the show, and everyone out there, we appreciate you listening.
Thank you.